Now, the story of Utopia here isn't anything particularly special. We have a load of colonists holed up in a quarry with evil monsters trying to break in. Nothing special so far, and as Graham Hart rightly pointed out in the Doctor Who Confidential, they look like a bunch of extras from Mad Max. Indeed, the whole thing looked like someone had been watching the Beebs' 80s dramatisation of Day of the Triffids, complete with padlocks, petrol-driven trucks, automatic weapons, and more doubling for tech than can inconceivably be more advanced than our own. Nevertheless, Doctor Who is so often focused on running around and the importance of life that it brushes past the inevitability. Indeed, Utopia is filled with lots of running around. Davies does a fairly effective job setting out both the solution to this episode's cliffhanger and the reveal of the Doctorphone, but he keeps things moving so fast there's a good chance he might miss them the first time around. That doesn't mean they aren't here though. I mean, it was only a matter of time before the Master returned to the new series. The idea of a Russ T Davies Master story had fans buzzing from the day the series relaunched. How would they do it? When? Who would play him? The answer is now, and Derek Jacobi would assume the role. There's probably not a better actor on the planet you could ask to reintroduce the Doctor's most dangerous villain. The presence of Professor Yana's pocket watch is also a terrific callback to mythology introducing human nature and family of blood, and is arguably a great device to bring the character back into the fold. There's darkness here, of course, and not just outside. There's every chance that the humans will die before they reach Utopia, but there's also something more insidious suggested. The future kind wander around looking fairly human and even capable of speech. Apparently the only way to distinguish between human and future kind is to examine the teeth, and even then some are able to slip through the net. The future kind are not, according to Yana, some strange alien menace of the weak, or mutants, or biological freaks. They are human. We call them the future kind, which is a myth in itself, Yana explains, but it's feared they are what we will become unless we reach Utopia. Even in the future, even on the brink of the end of all things, humanity still hasn't sorted itself out. It certainly doesn't bode well for the Doctor's faith in us that even as the future dies around us, we're still a bit of a mess. Indeed, it does effectively set up the devastating revealing last of the Time Lords, as the Master tries to completely destroy the Doctor's faith in humanity. Now, let's talk Captain Jack. Firstly, big kudos for the big reintroduction. The opening scene where the TARDIS lands on Cardiff Bay, and Jack is running up to it, is pure gold, and always will be. Especially with the play on the Torchwood theme from Murray Gold that plays behind the scene. Just fantastic.
Wait a minute. They had an earthquake in Cardiff a couple of years ago. Was that you?
Bit of trouble with the Slidine. Long time ago. Lifetimes. I was a different man by then.
All powered up.
But the thing is, how can we left him behind, Doctor? Martha asks later, and it's a legitimate question. The Doctor offers a flippant response. I was busy. Martha follows up with, is that what happens though? Seriously? Do you just get bored with us one day and we disappear? What's interesting is that Davies could probably mount a defence that would make the Doctor's actions seem relatively forgivable, but he opts not to. Indeed, the reasons that the Doctor abandoned Jack had been open to a fair amount of speculation. The edge would be to construct a narrative that might cast his decision in a relatively inoffensive light. He was in the middle of regenerating after all. Maybe he really did just forget. After all, the Doctor has done the same sort of thing before in the past. I'm specifically thinking of dumping Tegan in Time Flight and promising to come back for Sarah Jane in The Hand of Fear. Nevertheless, John Barrowman does what he does so well by charming up the episode rather quickly. It's a lot of fun to see him meet Martha, and even more touching to see him talk to the Doctor about Rose, especially a new incarnation of the Doctor. We finally find out Jack's story, why he is the way he is and cannot die. This revelation comes across in a terrific scene that explains why these two actors have received such acclaim for playing these roles.
Hello again. Oh, I'm sorry.
Doctor,
Captain,
good to see you.
and you. Same as ever. Although, have you had work done?
You can talk.
Oh, yes, the face. Regeneration. How did you know this was me?
The police box kind of gives it away.
Man, I love the scene with the intense Doctor and Jack in the cooler room. Not only is there a stellar bit of acting from Tennant and Barrowman respectively, but also some damn fine script work.
This new regeneration. It's kind of cheeky.
Especially interesting as Davies actually makes an effort to characterise the 9th/10th Doctor's decision to leave him as poorly as possible. In conversation about it, there's a none too subtle subtext to the 10th Doctor's discomfort with Jack, especially given Jack's sexual preferences. "It's not easy even looking at you, Jack, because you're wrong," he states. "You are, I can't help it. I'm a Time Lord. It's instinct, it's in my guts." Since the Doctor is generally presented as something of a liberal-minded champion of the individual, that's a very bold statement. "So what you're saying is that you're kind of prejudiced?" Jack responds, and that's not an unfair summary of the situation. It hardly presents the Doctor as heroic, after all. Leaving your friend behind in a completely alien environment after he died for you is a pretty dodgy decision. However, abandoning him because of a social prejudice is even more damning. Jack works well here because he calls some of the Doctor's hypocrisies into question. In particular, those hypocrisies particular to the 10th Doctor. During Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways in Series 1, the Ninth Doctor had absolutely no qualms about Jack using and carrying a weapon. That said, his willingness to passively allow Jack to sacrifice the lives of those on the station, while refusing to sacrifice those on Earth himself, did seem a little hypocritical. In contrast, the 10th Doctor is vocally uncomfortable with the fact that Jack carries a sidearm. When Jack moves to shoot the Fujikine, he yells, "Don't you dare!" Of course, the 10th Doctor's moral outrage doesn't extend to the guns used to protect the launch site. After a guard uses his machine gun to scare away the Fujikine, Jack sarcastically quips, "Oh, don't tell him to put his gun down." The Doctor responds again, indulging in hypocrisy, "He's not my responsibility." Jack retorts, "Oh, and am I? That makes a change." Jack certainly has a fair point here, and the Doctor is being a bit disingenuous. He readily and enthusiastically volunteers to help the humans leave the planet, but never once complains about their guns. And this brings us back to Rose and the treatment of Martha. By Utopia, it seems like Martha is getting as tired of it all as we are. She rolls her eyes when the Doctor and Jack meet up and immediately start talking about her oh-so-special predecessor. Jack even points out that Rose gets special treatment as compared to his other companions. When Martha asks about how he abandons his friends, Jack pipes in, "Not if you're blonde." Martha has very clearly had enough of hearing about this sainted Rose and replies, "Oh, she was blonde. Oh, what a surprise." To be fair, Martha does seem more sympathetic towards the Doctor when she discovers that Rose is trapped in another dimension with her family. But her frustration at being constantly compared to Rose does feel legitimate. The Doctor's obsession with Rose does repeatedly demonstrate how short-sighted he really is, and hints at his own lack of emotional intelligence. He's so caught up in his own pity party that he's so blind to how crap it must be for Martha. Unfortunately, while this portrayal sheds light on the Doctor as a character, it doesn't really do much for Martha. I do like that Martha's growing resentment of the Doctor's lack of tact and his attitude towards her, however. It is entirely justified and it feeds into the sound of drums really well. There's also the somewhat unpleasant suggestion that maybe Davies thinks that the Doctor's obsession with Rose is not weirdly out of whack. His difficulties relating to Martha and the fact that she is sick of hearing Rose's name suggests that the Doctor really needs to get over Rose, but Davies is just very quick to have Jack indulge in the same sort of Rose fetishism. The Doctor spent 2 years with Rose, and yet it seems that Jack has developed the same sort of borderline creepy obsession with her, despite only spending 3 on-screen stories with her. "I went back to her state in the 90s, just to once or twice," he explains. "Watching her growing up. Never said hello, timelines and all that. Time travel, enabling stalkers from the future. Regardless of whether it's just once or twice, it's still pretty creepy. However, Davies treats this as if it was meant to be the norm for men who spent time with Rose, which is a little bit unnerving. It suggests the Doctor's difficulties losing her were not unique to him, and perhaps they're to be treated as a character flaw, but the logical response to the situation. It casts a certain shadow over all of the Doctor's shady characterisation, because it suggests that it's not intended to make the character look like a jerk to Martha. And then there's the Master. The reveal at the end of Utopia is easily one of the greatest moments of Doctor Who history, especially in the new series. It's just handled, paced, written and directed perfectly. Indeed, Davies structured the season remarkably well. The presence of human nature and family and blood means that we know exactly what the significance of the fob watch is before we even discover what's hiding inside it. We don't need to know who the Master is, we just know that's a big deal initially. I also love the Doctor's immediate reaction on hearing about Yana's watch is one of abject terror. The Doctor spent so long feeling angsty over the loss of his people that you would expect some measure of enthusiasm as the discovery of another member of his kind reappears. Again, we get the suggestion the 10th Doctor might just be a bit of a hypocrite, that despite how he likes to play the last of his kind card, that on some level he doesn't really miss his people. Of course, it's entirely possible that on some level he just knows that it is the Master, and there's no hint of hope here, no suggestion that it could be the best thing ever. He completely and utterly freaks out at the idea that he's no longer the last of the Time Lords.
You are not
and Derek Jacobi plays a great master. Again, his portrayal here might just be the darkest take on the character to date. John Sim portrays the character as impossibly evil, but there's a cartoonish element to his interpretation that makes him seem downright sinister. It helps that Jacobi's master is swiftly established as a misogynist. In many ways, Jacobi plays the Christopher Eccleston Ninth Doctor of Masters. It's a solid dramatic interpretation of a larger-than-life role. He's smug, sarcastic and bitter, as opposed to John Sim, who manages to out-and-out crazy the Anthony Ainley master.
Son, then who are you?
I am the master.
If Jacobi's portrayal of the Master is intended to mirror Eccleston's turn of the Doctor, then it's clear that John Sims is channeling David Tennant. Indeed, this regeneration of the Master explicitly sets out to regenerate to match the 10th Doctor. Still, if the Doctor can be young and strong, then so can I. Indeed, the Master even gets a new voice moment in the TARDIS, which is clearly a shout out to Tennant's new teeth bit after he regenerated. John Sim, as a job that few actors would embrace, replaced Derek Jacobi playing the same role he was playing only moments earlier. And Sim does embrace it, to be fair, and almost steals the limelight in the episode in the brief moments towards the end. His line, new voice, recalls Tennant's first appearance of new teeth, as I've just said, and emphasising the dual nature of these two characters. Sim has a manic and explosive energy, not unlike that of David Tennant, and immediately you can see how to be a perfect foil for the Doctor, especially the 10th incarnation of the character. As a slight aside, I like the idea that the Master is just better at regenerating than the Doctor. Based on Romana's skill in the classic series with it just seems the Doctor lacks a knack for it. It also explains how John Sims' crazy doll regenerates at just the right level. There's no post-regeneration trauma here. I don't mind Sims' portrayal because Davies at least has some idea of how he plans to use the character, but I do think that Derek Jacobi's Master is a wasted portrayal. I'd still love to see him return in full Master regalia, that's for sure. Utopia is often dismissed as a lot of padding leading up to those final 10 minutes. I mean, I'd argue it's one of the best scripted episodes to be included as part of Davies' season finales. Davies is a writer who tends to do better with characters and themes rather than plotting, although not always. In particular, he has difficulty with ending his script, particularly as the threat and scale deflate. We'll see that in 2 more episodes coming up. Oddly enough, he works better when he's executing a simple premise and given room to play with his strengths within that plot. Utopia doesn't have the most compelling of plots, but it does have a lot of room for nice character growth that really pays off. We get to see the Doctor and the Master interact socially and admire each other's brilliance. We get to see Martha move one step closer to leaving the Doctor. We see the Doctor has some pretty major character flaws. We even get a nice scene between Chantho and Martha that makes us care for her before the Master brutally and inevitably murders her. More importantly, the future kind of effectively foreshadowed the Toclophane, and the literal darkness here that reflects the thematic darkness of The Last of the Time Lords. It's telling that the best aspects of The Last of the Time Lords are seeded here, where Davies isn't under constant pressure to map out a gigantic blockbuster plot. In contrast, it's the elements that build on the more tightly wound The Sound of Drums that feel ham-fisted and awkward. I'll be the first to criticise The Last of the Time Lords, that's coming up, but I think the way that Utopia is constructed is a major reason that the episode, and the season finale overall story, holds together for as long as it does. Furthermore, I stand by the point that the last 5 minutes of the episode are absolute perfection. The acting, the production, and the music is all on top notch. Not to mention the jaw-dropping cliffhanger that left me on edge for that entire week, waiting to discover just how our leads were going to get out of that one.
Use my name.
Master. I'm sorry.
Tough! I can't hold much longer, Doctor! No, you don't! End of the universe! Have fun! Bye-bye!
Two other things I particularly love are the little sound bites of the previous incarnations of the Master we hear just before the reveal, and of course the reveal itself, executed to near perfection by the phenomenal Jack.
TARDIS, the time vortex.
Regeneration.
The drums, the never-ending drum beat. Open me, you human fool. Open the light and summon me and receive my majesty. Destroy him! And you will give your power to me!
Overall, I love Utopia. I'd argue it's a much stronger episode than the two that follow, even if it isn't the most ambitious Doctor Who script ever written. Still, it's fabulous stuff that does demonstrate an excellent job with all the characters involved, and demonstrates just how good RTD can be, as long as bringing one of the most iconic characters from Classic Who into the new series is concerned anyway. I'll give Utopia a 9.5 out of 10.